in so many different ways. One of the things is the ever-increasing society of gratification, instant gratification. I want it now. Debt, incredibly high. People can't control themselves. Immorality, like you can't believe, as we see occasionally in the news and recognize very quickly, again, lacking self-control. And so many other different things that tell us as we're walking as Christian lives, there are two roads to walk on. One that says just do whatever you feel like, and the other that says there's got to be some self-control. So I want to talk about that this evening from the perspective of Galatians chapter 5. There's a discussion there between basically two roads. One's described as the works of the flesh, and the other the fruit of the Spirit. I mean, as you look at it, they're so contrasting. Works of the flesh are evident, it begins to describe. And it begins to describe all these different things that probably most of you would never even think about doing. And then the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. And that last item, self-control. And when you think about it, everything that we shouldn't be doing that's over in that terrible side, the flesh side, really is only refrained or held back from if we've got self-control. So you've got some in that direction. But really all the things that are in the other basket over here of love, joy, peace, patience, sometimes when we're lacking in that, it's because, again, the issue of self-control. Out of all that I'm looking at here, it seems to be the agent that makes everything either work or not work. So what I'd like you to do is to start off by looking at a video clip, and then we'll talk about this idea of self-control. So, Parker, if you run that for me. Now there's it. I already there, Schonhoff and self-control.
Un chasseur marque les gadis s'aventure dans le désert, mais il ne sait pas, comme le bushman, extraire l'eau des racines. Heureusement, il a sa propre technique tout aussi efficace.
He's taking a hold of an
Il
anthill.
sait qu'un babouin l'observe, ce qui ne manque jamais d'arriver car les babouins sont
And off in the distance, there's the baboon watching.
dans une fourmilière. Puis il met les grains
Put some pieces of fruit inside,
et les fait tomber au fond.
and he walks away. The baboon's watching the whole time.
Dans curiosité.
And he goes off and hides. Now watch how he hides. What do you exactly call that hiding? Is you,
Il joue les indifférents.
the baboon can't take it.
Savoir ce qu'il y a dans ce sacré trou.
He's got to see what's going on.
Il n'y tient plus. Il faut qu'il sache.
Looks inside.
Il glisse.
Ah, there's something I like.
Prend la poignée de grain.
He reaches inside, he grabs and holds it, and he can't get out.
Il lui suffirait de lâcher les grains.
His hand's too big once he's made a fist. But he won't turn loose.
Mais quand il y pense, il est trop tard.
He gets loose later, by the way. The guy will turn him loose.
Voilà une manière astucieuse de capturer un babouin. Il reste à le faire parler.
Now you wonder what he's doing there. He's throwing out some big chunks of salt.
Très rare dans ses barbaries. Il sait que son prisonnier va se jeter.
Because the bushman's looking for where the water source is, and the baboon knows where it's at.
Il est en état d'arrestation et qu'il y a un tout dans sa prison.
The baboon forgets that he's tied up, and he's just enjoying a good meal. But if you eat enough salt, you get thirsty. Then you sit back until he finishes.
Et le chantage.
The baboon forgets that he's tied up. He's having a good meal. After a while, he gets thirsty. The bushman's just waiting for it to hit.
Le lendemain matin, le Macalacadi vient voir si le prisonnier est décidé à se mettre à table.
See, the bushman's looking for where the water is.
Le lavage de cerveau a été efficace. Le chasseur relâche le babouin. Il sait que ce dernier va couler
Cuts him loose,
par secret sans se soucier.
and he's headed straight to his water source that he keeps hidden normally. But again, because he lacks self-control, he's willing to give up that piece of secret information also. There it is. Okay, Parker, thank you. I don't believe we evolved from monkeys. But I think the issue of self-control is a very large, sweeping thing, even with the baboons. After the monkey reached into the hole and grabbed a hold of it, and he saw the man coming, all they had to do was just turn loose. But to start with, he had to go down there and see what was there. Once he had a hold of it, he couldn't turn loose. And then after he ate the salt, he gave up his source of water also, which probably both of them could have shared easily. But I think of how much like us the baboon is in that situation. We're going along in life and everything's going good, and then we see something we want. And self-control goes out the window. Sometimes to the point that we get caught up in a trap, like the baboon. And we're not sure how to turn loose. Galatians, again, 5, verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There's no law against that. That's what God wants you to be. But it's the self-control that will cause us to love when we don't feel like loving, but we ought to. Or when we don't feel like being kind because that person's been unkind to us. But self-control will make us do it anyhow. It'll cause us to be patient when we feel like blowing a gasket. You know what that term means. We feel like being rude. Because that's just who we are, you see. And so, at the beginning, interestingly, it starts with love, which covers a multitude of sins, the Bible says. It's at the top of the mark. It causes everything else to emanate in a proper way. 1 Corinthians letter, all things are done out of love. If you speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not love, then you're just like a sounding brass. So vital love is. And yet it's the self-control that sometimes will cause us to be what we ought to be, to make decisions in right directions. And if we don't have the self-control, life comes unglued. I've been with too many people in life, and not just in the business of being the minister, but just in the business of life. And getting alongside of people whose life has come apart. And I talk with them about it, and it all comes down to no control. Made choices way back when I was young. And I just kept doing those things because it seemed like the neat thing or the good thing or the nice thing or the fun thing to do. And now here I am with my hand caught inside and I don't know how to let go. Self-control. A word from our designer. Kind of like a commercial I'm saying here. Our designer, of course, is God, the Creator. Interesting when you go back to that same situation I keep going back to in Genesis 3. Adam and Eve, they're in the garden together. And everything's looking good. And along comes Satan and says, hey, thought about trees lately? I'm paraphrasing the situation. Everything was going good until trees got introduced again. And then Eve looked at the tree, if you read the passage, and began to desire it, and forgot about what God was saying, and lost the self-control. Gotta have it. Gotta have it now. Can't think about anything else but. Must be great. And it was self-control. Genesis, again, just a little bit later, in her own family, chapter 4 now. two other characters, Cain and Abel. And as we're looking at the situation unfolding, if you've heard the story about Cain sacrificing, not being appreciated by God, Abel, his brother, yes, sacrifice is going well. The Bible doesn't disclose exactly how they knew one from the other, but they do. We're confident of that. And so God himself has a discussion with Cain on how to work this out. Verse 7, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, then sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you. But you should rule over it. You have the control to deal with this, God's saying. Put it into action. Self-control. I'm not going to make you do it, God says. It's going to have to be done by you, self. And as you know, he didn't. He just did what he felt like doing. Not only lost his brother, but lost so much in life. Esau, in Genesis chapter 25. This is a character who has a brother named Jacob. And the two of them, brothers and sisters, brothers and brothers, have it back and forth, the competition. And theirs was great. Theirs was so great it even started inside the womb, Jacob and Esau. And they come out being different, although they're twins, in so many different ways. And while Esau is out hunting, Jacob's back just having an easy life, what seems to be. And when Esau comes in from hunting, Jacob's fixing this really great stew. Good cook. And Esau comes in, and as we pick up in the story in Genesis 25, verses 29 to 34, he's dying of hunger. And he smells it, and he's just got to have it. And his brother says to him, sell me your birthright, and I'll give you the stew. Now, who in their right mind would sign over their inheritance and all that's there? I could go fix my own stew. I'll run down to wherever, Chick-fil-A, and get me a behind, whatever. Or he could have hired a servant and had it done. But he couldn't wait. There was no control. And he gave away his birthright for a pot of stew. And then despised his brother even more. No control. Gotta have it right then. I want you to listen to what I'm saying, both young and old, because it has everything to do with who we are and the decisions we make. Self-control. And you could go on through the Bible and you could see character after character that God discloses to us intentionally for us to examine this. To realize that nobody, even the greatest of people, even the man after God's own heart, David, can lose self-control if he's not paying attention. It can happen to any one of us. Out of the 12 apostles, we get at least 2 of them that are named in a very specific way, but all of them left Jesus for a while. And then he came back in, but one just totally lost it together. The one that betrayed Jesus. Because he wanted silver. No self-control. When he had everything he could have ever wanted. And he wanted more. And that's what we're like sometimes. When God has offered us everything and we want just a little bit more. Or one more of this or one more of that. And God stands back, I think, sometimes, and I'm imagining. And he looks down and he just maybe folds his arms and he goes, but you've got all that you could ever imagine. Why do you even think about these things? Like Eve with trees. Like Esau with stew. Like David with another woman. I mean, the self-control goes out the window. And yet that's the thing. As I began to think about all this and the value of it, and I'm thinking, okay, that's part of it. How do you get it? Or what do you do? Or how do you enhance it? What am I going to do for me? And all I can come down to is, it comes to, what is my will? It's a decision. Are you listening? It comes down to a decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to have it, or am I going to just cut loose? Because if I go one direction, it'll just keep leading that way. Now, of course, When I say self-control today, I've got to say it again tomorrow. I've got to say it this afternoon. I've got to keep on choosing that because it keeps nagging at me and driving me crazy. And yet, it's a different path to walk. It's a tough path, but it's a path that leads you in a direction that you turn around and you look and you go, this is where I want to be. But as you're standing right here and you think about where I'd like to be, you can't choose another path and expect to get over here. Self-control is what takes you down that path. Decision. Matthew chapter 25. There's 3 men described in this parable that Jesus tells. It's described as the parable of the talents, and those are sums of money. And yet, using our English word talent, it fits in another sense because each man gets, according to his ability, a certain sum of money to be in charge of. And probably you've read the parable. The first one goes out and he does what he's supposed to do and he gains more talents. And the second one does the same thing. And the third one, having only 1 talent, and he's got all kinds of excuses, I guess, but he takes and he buries the talent. Now watch closely. It's not like the prodigal son that he takes and he goes out and he wastes it to a prodigal living. He doesn't do anything bad with it at all. And when the Lord comes back, he says, okay, where's my talents? And the guy comes up. He says, I've got it. It's right here. I haven't lost it. Not wasted it. And yet Jesus' comment is, you wicked and lazy servant. You didn't get out and try. Where's your self-control? What are you thinking about? You just sit back and did nothing. And see, his decision was, I am not going to do anything. And in the parable, he loses everything by not doing anything. It's a choice of will. It's a decision. There's a psychiatrist known back in the earlier 1900s, during World War II. Viktor Frankl is his name. German psychiatrist, also of Jewish nature. And because of his background during World War II, he winds up in a German concentration camp. The place is called Auschwitz, one of the worst. He begins in his efforts to survive by analyzing people that's in there with him. Now, when you have ever seen any pictures, you can't imagine them looking as good or as healthy as we are. You've heard the term skin and bones, and if you've seen the pictures, you know what they look like. He describes in his book that oftentimes when there's one man that's at the point of death, and because he just can't survive anymore, and he's laying there on the bed or whatever mat or floor he is, he says, the people gather around him. They're his friends. And they look at him and they think, I believe I could use his shoes or his shoestrings, or maybe his shirt. And the man's looking up, knowing, because he's been in the same place. This is what life has reduced itself to. And he said, the interesting thing is to watch how everybody reacts in the situation. Because some keep on striving to live, and others choose death. They'll run toward the Constantine wire, knowing that the soldier will shoot them down, because they can't stand it anymore, and they choose death. And he began to think, why does one choose this and the other choose that, when the circumstances are the same? And he said, it all comes down to, I have control. I can decide this or I can decide that. And it's not the circumstances that are causing this actually to come about. It is my will. I will decide this. And this is what I'm getting to. We have to have the will. This is what I'm going to be as a Christian. Do you listen? I choose this. I choose the fruit of the Spirit. I do not go down this path. That is not where I belong. That's not where I want to end up. And so I continually, daily choose in that direction. And of course, along with that, number 2, this idea of getting out of it, it's only because of Christ. We mentioned this morning from Philippians 4. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I'm not going to say my willpower is going to make it alone. But if I have no willpower, no decision, Christ is not going to benefit me a bit until I decide to choose Him. So it comes down to a resolve. Now we'll get to that man, the prodigal son, because in Luke 15, when Jesus tells the story of this guy that chose lack of control, let's enjoy life. He asked for his inheritance, Dad gave it to him, and he takes off and he spends and wastes and has a great old time. No self-control. And he runs out of money, and as soon as he does, he runs out of friends. And then he finds himself, as we remember the parable, looking at the pigs that he's feeding and taking care of, wishing that he had that kind of food. I've never eaten pig slop before. I've watched them going after that stuff, and it's called slop for a reason. But that's what the guy was wanting to have because he had nothing. And then Jesus says, he came to himself. Resolve. I'm going to do different. And that's what we need when we're going this direction, is to wake up someday. You hear me? Wake up and resolve. That road that I was walking down that my parents were on, that was a good road. I know their parents, they're fuddy dudds, they don't know anything. It was a good road. It was not always the best road in the sense of parental, whatever, a little tight on some things, but it was a good road. And it was certainly a lot better than the pig slop road that I ended up on. And he came to himself. Resolve. Joshua says, choose you who this day who you'll serve, Joshua 24. And then, of course, we've got to add to that we don't have it again on by ourselves. We've got to have prayer in that effort. James talks about the wisdom, that you pray for that you make the right decisions, that you go along in life and doing the right things. And then out of all of that, you've got to trust Jesus, number 3, to take you there. So you resolve, you pray, and then you trust. And you follow the footsteps of Jesus because you know the other direction is not going to help you. There's another video that I was looking at when I was looking over this lesson. If you type in Google search and do self-control, there's a little video that pops up. Shows a little child, 8 or 9 years old, that's put in a room by himself. Now this child's already been pre-questioned. Do you like marshmallows? Yes. And he puts him in there and they put one good-sized marshmallow on the plate. And the person says, now, I'm going to go away for a few minutes. If I come back and the marshmallow's still here, I'll give you another one. And it's funny to watch it because the child's sitting there looking at that. You know, he thinks he's by himself, but there's a camera focused on him. The person leaves, and there he is, and he's got his head on him, looking at the table, and he's staring at that marshmallow. He gets a little closer. He'll pick it up, smell it, put it back down. Looks around. And there's 2 or 3 of them. The child picks it up, and he puts it down. There's one where he nibbles all the way around the edge. He's not going to just woof it down to start with. And there it is, inviting you. And it all comes down to, can you leave the marshmallow alone and let life give you what you're supposed to have? The marshmallow, of course, representing what God wants to give you. It's a matter of self-control. Choose right. Make good decisions. Allow God to lead. Self-control. It's a daily process. It's not an easy one, but it takes you down the road that doesn't have you where your hand's stuck inside the thing, reaching for the beans. And you got to hold it with a fist, and you can't get out. And I've talked to people that have been down that road, and some of them that still have the handful, and they don't know what to do. And it's a sad, sad situation. Good, honest, kind people that don't know how to turn loose. Self-control. Work on it. Pray about it. Resolve to live it. And if you're without it tonight, and your life is a wreck, and you're going down the wrong direction, and you made wrong choices, then choose today to come down front and let Jesus lead you. His guidance is good. His direction is perfect. Trust Him and give your life to Him. Would you come while we stand and sing?